What's up, CrossFit Linchpin? Quick video today, ideally, on scaling. Scaling always seems to be a topic everybody can stand some chatting about. So I have a goal, and that goal is to do basically more videos on scaling. I would like to just take a whole bunch of CrossFit benchmark classic workouts and walk through ways to scale them, the whys and why nots, or what to think about, so that everybody can just get a bit more well-grounded, educated on scaling. Because most people should probably scale. More people should probably scale than do scale. Scaling is your friend. Scaling is cool. All the cool kids are scaling. I highly recommend that you do. Ego is the enemy, so remove ego, embrace scaling. We say that all the time at CrossFit Linchpin, and even after 14 years of doing CrossFit, I bet I scale definitely 2 workouts a week, for sure. So that wasn't always the case, but I try to get smarter as the years pass by. So for today, let's talk about Fran. So the purpose of this will be scaling Fran. We're not going to be able to talk about all the ways. There are almost an infinite number of ways to scale any workout, just like there are an infinite number of ways to program workouts and whatnot, but I'm going to try to just cover a bunch of them, and then hopefully it helps. It gets in the old brain cavity. So Fran, in case you're unfamiliar with it, it's quintessential CrossFit. 21-15-9 repetitions for time of a thruster paired with a pull-up. The thruster is 95 pounds for the gentlemen, 65 pounds for the women. So you'll hear at your CrossFit Level 1 seminar, and if you poke around, the journal back in the day and all that good stuff, you would always hear that one of the key things to do when scaling is to try to preserve the stimulus or preserve the intent of the workout. So before we do that with any workout, we need to think about what's the point of Fran. It obviously, and this would go with anything, fit into this day's cycle in the programming, for we needed a short time domain, high intensity workout, paired a barbell movement with a gymnastics movement, weightlifting and gymnastics. And the weightlifting movement, the thruster, takes us below parallel on a leg drive and finishes with a press overhead, so from below parallel to overhead, and paired with the body weight pull-up. So we've got weightlifting and gymnastics, relatively short time domain, high intensity. The movements that were chosen for Fran even though Fran stings, we all know that, but the movements have a low degree of interference, so that the thruster, although it stings and thrusters make everything harder, doesn't interfere that much with the pull-up and vice versa. If it was a front squat paired with a wall ball and the thruster paired with a wall ball, that'd be a bit different. It'd be a high degree of interference. If a thruster paired with a handstand push-up, you'd have a high degree of interference. So all things considered, thrusters paired with the pull-ups, we're looking for short time domain, low interference from the movements, 95 pounds for the gentlemen, 65 pounds for the ladies. Certainly gets heavy, there's no doubt about that, and wherever you are in your fitness journey, that might be your 1 rep max, or it might be something that you can do 40 unbroken reps with, right? But in general, if we took a step back, we would say the loading on Fran is light to moderate, and the repetition range comes out to 45. We would say that's moderate as well. So now if we understand all those rough things about Fran, high intensity, short time domain, low degree of interference, a weightlifting movement paired with a gymnastics movement, a below parallel to overhead, light to moderate loading, moderate rep range, now we can say, well, that's what we're trying to replicate when we scale or modify Fran. So the easiest ones right off the bat, you can scale the loading or you can scale the reps. Of course, you could scale both. But if you're going to scale the loading, going down to 75 pounds for the gentleman, 65 pounds for the gentleman, and an empty barbell, and vice versa for the ladies, that's one of the easiest things to do, and that might solve your scaling concerns. If somebody was fine with the pull-ups, but not so much with the thruster, then that would do quite nicely. Conversely, let's say that somebody didn't have an issue whatsoever with the barbell, but the pull-ups were a large struggle, and they thought that was going to kill their intensity on Fran. So before we talk about modifying the pull-ups, maybe we should talk about, in all those other metrics of What is it that we're trying to preserve? We want to know, in general, I said that Fran was short time domain, high intensity. What does that mean? Well, I have my wonderful data from beyond the whiteboard pulled up on my computer here where I can plug in any benchmark that I want, and it will tell me, the 99th percentile on Fran all the way down to the 20th percentile. So, in case you're unfamiliar with percentiles, let's see, for Fran, for men, the 95th percentile is 2 minutes and 44 seconds. So what that means is, since 2:44 is a 95th percentile, if you got a 2 minutes and 44 seconds on Fran, you are faster than 95% of the people doing Fran. You are in the top 5%. So, most people aren't in the top 5%, right? We just neglected 95% of the working out population, or at least the ones that post. So, that's short time domain, but I'm going to look down to right middle of the road, the 50th percentile. Right down the center, half on one side, half on the other. The 50th percentile for Fran is 5 minutes and 35 seconds for the gentleman and 6 minutes and 36 seconds for the women. So let's split the difference and call it 6 minutes. So in the grand scheme of things, short time domain. So when we're also modifying or scaling the workout, if we modified it in a way that took everybody in the class 90 seconds, that's even better than the 99th percentile, so it probably wasn't a good scale. Conversely, if we scaled it in a way that took everybody 14 minutes, probably wasn't kind of keeping the intent in there as well. So we would probably want to be, I said 6 minutes was the middle of the road, probably somewhere in that 4 to 8 minute window, and if your scale wound up being in there, you probably did it pretty darn well, acceptably well. So that brought us back to maybe somebody's okay with the barbell, but they struggle with the pull-ups. And it just depends on what struggle means. So if somebody just is upset that they're new to it and their buddy is a ninja and is going to get a 310 Fran and doesn't break anything up, and they feel bad because they have to do the set of 21 in 10-6-5 or 7-7-7, and then they have to break the 15 up into 3 sets of 5 and the 9 up into 3 sets of 3, but they do it with short breaks, and they get a 6:02 on Fran. Well, then based upon the time domains and the metrics that we said, does that individual have to scale? Should they scale? They did it with the prescribed pull-ups and the prescribed weight, broke it up more than their ego wanted to, but they finish in about 6 minutes. They're probably right where they need to be. And we could have a big discussion as to would that person benefit from every now and then modifying it in a way that allows them to stomp the gas a bit more. A very fun discussion. Maybe we'll save that for later. But in general, that person's probably fine. Now, if somebody's like, yeah, I can do the pull-ups, it's going to be 21 singles with 30 seconds rest between each, or a bunch of sets of 2 with a minute rest between each, and I'm going to come in on Fran on 17 minutes and 10 seconds, okay, we got to do something with those pull-ups. And there's a myriad of things that we could do. Maybe if they have, a set of 10 in them and then they hit a wall, maybe we have a set of rings set up and they do that initial set of 10 out of the 21, and then bang, they knock out the rest on ring rows. And so they do the same, they finish the thrusters in the set of 15, they go back, they get whatever they can on the pull-up bar, and when it starts to they hit a wall, you got a set of rings there, they finish off with ring rows. You could play that same one on a set of 9, so they're kind of doing both. They're working the pull-up, which is fantastic, but then so that we keep the intensity up and we preserve the intended stimulus of the movement, and they're getting better at a pulling movement, we work in the ring rows. Maybe somebody right off the bat is just going to do ring rows. And I'm a huge fan of ring rows. You could obviously put in jumping pull-ups, but if somebody asks me, in general, jumpers or ring rows, I'm going to say ring rows probably every time. Ring rows are fantastic and infinitely scalable from just wherever you position your feet. You can make the ring row super easy that you're barely leaning back, and you could probably do a set of 100, or you could have it all the way that your feet up on a box, your body's basically parallel with the ground, and they're just as hard as dead hang pull-ups. So ring rows are fantastic. So I would most likely scale the pull-ups to the ring row. that paired with the appropriate weight on the barbell, and most people walking the planet in one way, shape, or form are going to be able to do Fran. So you could also scale the reps. Fran doesn't have to be 21-15-9. Maybe it's 15-12-9. Maybe it's 12-9-6. You know, somebody who's deconditioned, hasn't worked out in a very long time, Fran at a reduced loading, ring rows instead of pull-ups, in a 12-9-6 rep scheme is going to be just fine for them, and they can slowly build up from there. Both movements don't have to be the exact same as well, right? Just because the thrusters are 21 doesn't mean the pull-ups have to be 21. If somebody is just where they are in their fitness, that the pull-ups are one heck of a struggle and the thrusters aren't, then maybe the thrusters stay at the prescribed loading, they stay at 21-15-9, and the pull-ups go 15-12-9 or something like that. So again, there are no rules, but there are things that do and don't make sense. Hopefully that's clear in one way, shape, or form. And you know, if you could scale it all the way down to a PVC pipe if you needed to. But what if somebody's in the middle? What if an empty barbell is too heavy, PVC pipe is too light? Bring in the old dumbbells. Maybe you have a set of 10-pound dumbbells you can put in each hand. If you don't have the dumbbells, a wall ball is basically a thruster in disguise, and so now you're doing a thruster with a 20-pound object versus the 45-pound empty bar, so that might work just fine as well. And also, you could maybe do this. Maybe that individual, maybe we go back to the individual we mentioned a second ago, that for the set of 21 pull-ups, they've got about a set of 10 in them, and then they hit a wall. They need a big recovery time, you know, and it deteriorates after that. The intensity tanks. Well, if we just said a second ago that the median, like the 50%, the 50th percentile on Fran, 5:30 for men, 6:30 for women, so we're going to call it 6 minutes. What if we just made it a 6-minute AMRAP, right? Now, if you have a 2-minute and 30-second Fran, doing a 6-minute AMRAP of Fran is probably just a small slice of hell that we wouldn't want to bestow upon your plate. But if you're that individual that has a 6 to 8 minute Fran, right, with a bunch of breaking up, what if we made Fran a 6-minute AMRAP of 5 thrusters and 5 pull-ups? So as they cycle through that, and they're taking decent little amounts of rest to keep getting 5s, if they have a Fran that's somewhere around the 6 to 8 minute mark, you know, they're probably going to get into the same number of reps, maybe a few more because they're having a quicker turnover with some smaller sets in there. And that's a good way for them to keep their intensity high, keep moving. They're never doing chunks of work that are so big that they reach an utter and complete failure, but there'll be a ton of fitness in there, no doubt about it. And you know one way or another that they're done at 6 minutes. For another athlete, the proper thing might be a 5-minute AMRAP. For a different athlete, the proper thing might be a 7-minute AMRAP. And maybe it's not 5 reps of each, and you play with the loading, and maybe it should be ring rows for this one and not the other one. But regardless of whoever it is, whatever they have going on, you're going to be able to modify Fran in some way, shape, or form if you understand what we spoke about at the beginning of the video, which was, what is Fran? Why did it fit into today's programming? What are just some descriptors of the thruster? What's it trying to do? What's the pull-up all about? How can we modify each one of those? What's this athlete have going on? What's the rough time domain that we're trying to get across? And then make an intelligent decision. So hopefully that helps. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm not going to give out advice for if you're injured how to do something, just because there's probably some sort of law about, telling people what to do when they're injured over the internet. So common sense should prevail. But I will say, when I had a motorcycle wreck, it just blew my AC joint out and didn't use my right arm for a very long period of time. I did one-arm ring rows. I couldn't lean back very far, but I would just pin my bad arm there and I'd do one-arm ring rows. And then I did one-arm dumbbell thrusters. I did a lot of one-arm stuff. So even if somebody has a tweak or a little dent in the fender, there's probably some way with intelligence that you can make it appropriately difficult for them. That appropriately difficult is a good kind of mindset to be in. So that's that. I hope that helps everybody, because scaling to me is as interesting as programming. It's fantastic. It is infinitely scalable. It really is. And if you start to understand scaling, you start to understand, what each movement is trying to elicit from the athlete, then you can make really good decisions based upon not only the level of the athlete, be it new or experienced, but also you can make great decisions for equipment as well. Maybe you're on the road, maybe you're in a hotel. You can think about the workout of the day, look at the gear that you have available, and even if it's not ideal, I bet when you start to get a sense of these things, you'll be able to look at that stuff and find a way to make it really darn close to whatever it was that you're trying to accomplish. So that's that. Hopefully we'll chip away at some benchmarks. I'll post these on the YouTube channel so that, again, hopefully there's useful references for people. All right, I'm always bad about checking out questions. Let's see. Super helpful discussion. As someone who is really strong due to more powerlifting than Metcons, I often struggle with how to scale properly. Tips on how to identify what the stimulus is to keep. Naptown Bridget, I have a feeling that you missed the beginning of the video, because we exactly discussed that. Some things to look at that will help you identify what the intent of the workout is, and then once you understand the intent of the workout, then you can make some good decisions as to how to navigate it for exactly what you need to do. So that's it. I'm going to get back on the computer and just get to work. Everybody have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later.